The holographic display filled the entire council chamber with blue light. It showed a perfect three-dimensional map of Viridian Prime, rotating slowly in the air. Every corridor, every room, every system was marked with incredible detail. The aliens stared in shocked silence, but the map showed more than just the station's layout. Red markers appeared throughout the image, highlighting structural weak points, power distribution vulnerabilities, and critical system junctions. The display was more detailed than the station's own classified blueprints, the ones that only the council and top security personnel could access. "How did you get this information?" Velocros demanded, its voice sharp with alarm. Jiwoo smiled calmly. "My son gathered it. Over the past 3 weeks, Minho has been here, watching, learning, drawing pictures, as you all saw. Those pictures were measurements. Those games were simulations. Those questions were intelligence gathering." Thexera stood up violently, his chair scraping across the floor. "This is espionage. This is an act of war." Commander Yuna stepped forward, placing herself between the reptilian and the human delegation. Her hand rested on her weapon. Her expression was calm but dangerous. "Please sit down," Jiwoo said quietly. "We are not finished." Minho showed them the rest. The boy pressed his datapad again. The hologram expanded outward, showing the space around Viridian Prime. There, floating in perfect formation outside the neutral zone, was Thexra's fleet. 317 ships, their positions marked precisely, but new markers appeared on the display. 23 red circles highlighted specific locations within the fleet formation. Each circle marked a vulnerability, gaps in sensor coverage, overlapping weapons ranges that would cause friendly fire, supply ships positioned where they could be easily targeted, command vessels exposed to attack vectors. "Your fleet formation has 23 critical weaknesses," Jiwoo stated. Minho identified all of them. His simulations show that a properly positioned strike force could disable your command structure within the first 4 minutes of combat. Thexra's scales had gone pale. He sat down slowly, staring at the hologram with growing horror. "This is impossible," he whispered. "How could a child—" "Let me explain," Jiwoo said. She stood and walked around the table slowly, her voice calm and measured. "All of you have made the same mistake. You looked at humanity and saw a young, primitive species. You looked at my son and saw a harmless child. You saw what you expected to see." She gestured to Minho, who sat quietly, still holding his datapad. The boy looked up at the council with eyes that suddenly seemed much older than 8 years. "Minho is part of a program we call neural advancement," Jiwoo continued. "For thousands of years, humans fought each other in terrible wars. We learned to think strategically. We developed tactics and counter-tactics. We studied psychology and behavior. We became very good at predicting what our enemies would do." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Some of our children are born with enhanced abilities for pattern recognition and strategic analysis. We train them from birth. By the age of 8, they can process tactical information faster than most military computers. But unlike computers, they understand human behavior. They can predict irrational decisions. They can see patterns that artificial intelligence cannot." "Why would you do this?" Orin asked quietly. "Why create child soldiers?" "We do not use them as soldiers," Jiwoo replied. "We use them as analysts, strategists, intelligence gatherers. Minho is not trained to fight. He is trained to think. And what he has been thinking about for the past 3 weeks is how to defend Earth against any threat that might come from this council." Minho touched his datapad one more time. The hologram shifted again, zooming out to show the broader region of space around the outer nexus. New markers appeared, ship signatures, hundreds of them. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Aliens shouted in multiple languages. Velcross's many legs clicked rapidly on the floor. Even Orin's usual calm was broken, the energy being pulsing with visible agitation. "Order," Velcross called out. "Silence. Let the human explain." Jiwoo waited for the room to quiet. Then she spoke with cold precision. "You were told that Earth has 17 warships. That was accurate when we first made contact. However, you all assumed that was our total capacity. You assumed we showed you everything. That assumption was incorrect." She pointed at the hologram where ship markers glowed in green. "Earth's full fleet consists of 212 vessels. They have been in position for 2 weeks, hiding in asteroid fields and using stealth technology that we developed during what we call the Cold War. That was a period when humans built weapons capable of destroying our entire planet multiple times over. We learned to hide things very well during that time. 200 ships, Dexra said slowly. That is still fewer than my fleet. Numbers are not everything, Jiwoo replied. Minho has run over 15 million combat simulations using the data he gathered. In 73% of scenarios, Earth's fleet would achieve victory in a battle at this location. Would you like to know why? No one answered, but all eyes were fixed on her. First, positioning. Our ships are already in optimal attack formations. Your ships are grouped for intimidation, not combat efficiency. Second, our vessels carry nuclear weapons. I believe you abandoned such technology thousands of years ago as primitive and inefficient. She let that word hang in the air. Nuclear. The other civilizations had indeed moved past such crude weapons. They considered them barbaric. Primitive does not mean ineffective, Jiwoo continued. Humans spent centuries perfecting nuclear weapons. We know exactly how much damage they cause. More importantly, we understand their psychological impact. We lived for generations knowing that at any moment we could all be destroyed. That shaped how we think about warfare. You threaten us with mutual destruction? Velcros asked. No, Jiwoo said firmly. I am explaining reality. You brought a fleet here to intimidate us. You demanded that we surrender territory. You assumed we would be frightened and give in. Instead, we used your arrogance against you. We let you underestimate us. We let you think we were weak. And while you were laughing at my son drawing pictures, he was mapping every vulnerability you have. She walked back to her seat and sat down, folding her hands on the table exactly as she had during the first meeting. Earth came here to negotiate honestly. We wanted peace and cooperation. But we are not naive. We prepared for the possibility that you would try to exploit our position as newcomers. That preparation has now been demonstrated. Dexra stared at the tactical display, his mind clearly working through scenarios. His expression shifted from anger to calculation, to something that looked almost like fear. You planned this from the beginning, the reptilian said slowly. This entire diplomatic mission was a setup. We planned for every possibility, Jiwoo corrected. The setup was bringing my son here and letting you dismiss him as harmless. Everything else followed from your assumptions. You could have treated Earth as an equal. You could have negotiated fairly. Instead, you chose intimidation. So now you understand what humanity is truly capable of. Oren spoke quietly. What do you want from us now? Recognition, Jiwoo said. Respect. Fair treatment. The border systems remain under Earth control. There will be no forced partnerships or territorial demands. And from this moment forward, you will understand that humanity is not weak. We are simply new. There is a difference. Velcros looked at Minho, who still sat quietly with his datapad. The boy met the insectoid's gaze and smiled. It was an innocent, friendly smile. But now everyone in the room understood what that smile really meant. The human child was not innocuous at all. He was a perfect weapon hidden in plain sight. And if one 8-year-old could gather this much intelligence in 3 weeks, what could humanity accomplish with decades or centuries? The Council of Elders, rulers of civilizations thousands of years old, sat in stunned silence. They had been completely outmaneuvered by a species they thought was primitive. And the worst part was knowing that this demonstration was probably only a fraction of what humans could do, if they really wanted to. I request an emergency closed session of the Council, Velcros said finally. We need to discuss this situation without the human delegation present. Jiwoo stood. Of course. Take all the time you need. Minho and I will be in the observation deck if you need us. As the humans left the chamber, Minho looked back one last time. He waved at the assembled aliens with a cheerful smile. Then he was gone, leaving the council to grapple with a terrifying new reality. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and they had announced their presence not with weapons or threats but with a simple demonstration of perfect intelligence, gathering disguised as childlike innocence. It was perhaps the most frightening introduction any civilization had ever made. The council chamber doors sealed with a heavy metallic sound. For the first time in galactic history, humanity was not invited to a meeting about humanity. The 5 representatives sat in tense silence, each processing what they had just witnessed. Dexra was the first to speak. We need to destroy them, now, before they become more powerful. You saw the tactical analysis, Velcros responded. Even with numerical advantage, an attack now would likely fail. And even if we succeeded, at what cost? They have nuclear weapons positioned to cause massive damage. Then we bring more ships, Thexra insisted. We call in reinforcements from every Dominion world. We gather a fleet so large that their 200 ships become meaningless. And how long would that take? Orin asked quietly. Weeks, months? What do you think the humans will do during that time? If they could hide 200 ships in plain sight, what else are they hiding? The question hung in the air like a dark cloud. None of them had considered this possibility before. They had always assumed they knew everything about potential threats. But the humans had proven that assumption dangerously wrong. I have been accessing Earth's public databases, Velcros announced. I wanted to understand their history. What I found is disturbing. The insectoid projected data into the center of the room. Images and information scrolled past. Battles, wars, weapons, strategies, thousands of years of human conflict, displayed in overwhelming detail. Humans have been fighting each other for their entire recorded history, Velcros explained. Not occasional conflicts over resources like most civilizations experience. Constant warfare. They have never known true peace. The data showed World War I, where millions died fighting over small strips of land. World War II, where entire cities were destroyed and atomic weapons were used for the first time. The Cold War, where two human nations aimed enough nuclear missiles at each other to destroy their planet many times over. Look at these numbers, Velcros continued. In what they call World War II, over 60 million humans died in just 6 years. 60 million. Our entire Galactic War, the one we consider the bloodiest in history, lasted 50 years and resulted in 12 million casualties across 5 species. The council members stared at the numbers. They could barely comprehend the scale of death and destruction. They killed each other at this scale? One representative asked in disbelief. And they survived as a species? Not only survived, Velcros replied. They learned from it. Every war taught them new ways to fight, new tactics, new strategies. They developed psychological warfare, cyber warfare, guerrilla tactics, terrorism, propaganda, espionage. They have studied violence in ways we cannot imagine. Orin pulsed with a troubled light. This explains the child. If humans have been training for warfare since birth for thousands of years, creating young strategists makes perfect sense in their context. It is normal for them. To us it seems shocking, but to them it is simply how they survive. This is exactly why we must act, Thexra said. They are dangerous by nature. They cannot be trusted. They will always be planning, always preparing for war. We cannot coexist with such a species. Every civilization that has attempted genocide has failed and been destroyed in return, Velcros stated coldly. This is historical fact. If we attack Earth, they will retaliate. And based on what we now know about human psychology, they will retaliate with extreme force. They developed a concept called mutual assured destruction. Velcros continued. It means that if one side attacks, both sides are destroyed. They lived under this threat for generations. They are comfortable with it. We are not. That gives them a psychological advantage. Thexra sat back heavily. His claws drummed on the table, a nervous gesture he rarely displayed. He was beginning to understand the terrible truth. Humans were not afraid to die. They were not afraid of mutually destructive conflict. Their entire history had prepared them for exactly that scenario. What do you propose? Thexra asked finally. We negotiate, Orin said. We grant them full recognition as a major power. We establish mutual defense treaties. We treat them as equals, not as threats. That rewards their deception. Thexra protested. No, Velcros corrected. That acknowledges our mistake. We underestimated them. We tried to intimidate them. They responded by showing us how dangerous it is to underestimate them. Now we have a choice. We can escalate this into warfare that will cost millions of lives and might still result in human victory, or we can accept that humanity is a major power and treat them accordingly. The debate continued for hours. Arguments were made and countered. Data was analyzed. Simulations were run. Every option was examined. As dawn approached on the station's artificial day cycle, the council reached a consensus. It was not unanimous in spirit, but it was unanimous in vote. They would grant Earth full status as a major power. The contested border systems would remain under human control. A mutual defense treaty would be offered, not because they wanted to, but because the alternative was too dangerous to consider. Thexra stood to leave, his expression bitter. Before exiting, he turned back to the others. We have not become weaker today. We have simply recognized strength we failed to see before. But mark my words, humanity will change the balance of power in this galaxy. Nothing will be the same again. No one disagreed with him. When Ambassador Jiwoo was called back to the council chamber, she listened to their decision with no visible emotion. When they finished speaking, she nodded once. Earth accepts these terms, she said. We are pleased that wisdom has prevailed. There is one thing I must know, Velcros said. Was all of this planned? The entire diplomatic Meyerson demonstrating your capabilities. Was it all calculated from the beginning? Jiwoo smiled slightly. We hoped for peaceful cooperation. We genuinely did. But we also prepared for the possibility that you would try to exploit our apparent weakness. A human strategist once said, hope for the best but prepare for the worst. That is what we did. And if we had treated you fairly from the start, Oren asked, then you never would have known about our hidden fleet or our intelligence-gathering capabilities, Jiwoo replied. Minho would have simply enjoyed his vacatistation. You would have thought humans were harmless newcomers, and perhaps that would have been better for everyone. But you chose intimidation. So we responded with a demonstration. She paused, her expression becoming serious. Let me be very clear about something. Earth does not want war. We have seen enough war in our history. We know its true cost in ways you cannot understand. But we will not be pushed around or threatened. If you treat us with respect, we will be loyal and valuable allies. If you treat us as enemies, you will discover that humans are very good at being enemies. After the formal meeting ended, Jiwoo met privately with each council member. These conversations were brief and conducted away from any recording devices. What was said in those meetings remained secret, but observers noted that each alien who spoke with Jiwoo emerged looking troubled. Rumors began to spread through the station. Some said Jiwoo had revealed additional military capabilities that made the displayed fleet look small by comparison. Others claimed had presented detailed intelligence reports on each civilization's military vulnerabilities, proving that Earth had been gathering information long before making first contact. The most disturbing rumor was that there were dozens of children like Minho scattered throughout the galaxy, each one gathering intelligence and preparing tactical analyses for potential conflicts. Whether this was true or simply psychological warfare designed to keep the aliens paranoid, no one could say for certain, but the effect was the same. Ization immediately established special intelligence divisions focused exclusively on monitoring human activities. They tracked human ships, analyzed human communications, and tried to predict human strategies. They all knew they were fighting a losing battle. They were trying to understand a species that had spent 10,000 years studying itself, a species that had perfected deception, misdirection, and strategic thinking through endless conflict. Late that night, Commander Yuna found Minho sitting alone in an observation deck. The boy was looking out at the stars, his datapad resting on his lap. How do you feel? Yuna asked, sitting beside him. Minho shrugged. Okay, I guess. Did we do the right thing? What do you think? I think we showed them that being nice-looking does not mean being weak, Minho said thoughtfully. Sometimes the most dangerous thing is something that does not look dangerous at all. Yuna smiled. Your mother would be proud to hear you say that. Minho looked down at his datapad. Commander Yuna, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think they will always be afraid of us now? Yuna considered the question carefully. Fear and respect are not the same thing, but sometimes they look similar. The aliens are not afraid of us because we are monsters. They are cautious because they realize they did not understand us as well as they thought they did. That is not a bad thing. I hope we can be friends with them someday, Minho said quietly. We can, Yuna assured him. But first they need to learn that friendship requires respect. You helped teach them that lesson. Minho nodded and went back to his datapad. Yuna noticed he was mapping the docking bay systems. She smiled slightly. Old habits die hard. For a species that had survived by always thinking ahead, 6 months had passed since the confrontation at Viridian Prime. The galaxy had changed in subtle but profound ways. Every major civilization now had departments dedicated entirely to studying humanity. They analyzed human culture, tracked human ship movements, and attempted to predict human strategies. The border systems near Earth remained under human control. No one challenged this anymore. The Mutual Defense Treaty had been signed with great ceremony. Earth was now officially recognized as a major galactic power. with all the rights and responsibilities that came with that status. But peace came with a price. That price was constant vigilance. In the reptilian dominion, Thexra sat in his war room reviewing intelligence reports. His analysts had been working non-stop to understand human military doctrine. What they found was both fascinating and terrifying. Humans did not just prepare for the wars they were currently fighting. They prepared for every possible war they might ever fight. Earth maintained detailed tactical plans for conflicts with civilizations they had never even met. They ran constant simulations of scenarios that had never occurred but might someday. One report particularly troubled Thexra. It described a human military philosophy called defense in depth. The idea was simple. Never rely on a single defensive line. Instead, create multiple layers of defense, each one designed to slow down and weaken an enemy. Even if the enemy broke through one layer, they would face another and another and another. Thexra realized that the demonstration at Viridian Prime had been exactly this. Earth had shown one layer of their capabilities, but how many more layers existed beneath that? The hidden fleet had been impressive, but was it the last secret they possessed? His chief analyst entered the room carrying another report. "Commander, we have completed our assessment of human population distribution, and?" Thexra asked. "Humans have established colonies on 47 worlds in just the past 6 months. They are expanding faster than any new civilization in recorded history. More concerning, many of these colonies are in locations with significant strategic value." Thexra studied the star map. The human colonies formed a pattern. They were not randomly scattered. They created defensive positions, supply line connections, and potential staging areas for military operations. Even in peace, humans were preparing for war. "Should we be concerned?" the analyst asked. Thexra sighed deeply. "We should always be concerned about humans, not because they are evil or aggressive, but because they never stop thinking about survival. It is in their nature. We must adapt to this new reality." On a distant research station, Velcro sat surrounded by data streams. The insectoid had become something of an expert on human psychology. Other civilizations often consulted Velcros when trying to understand human behavior. Currently, Velcros was analyzing human entertainment. Movies, books, games, and stories. What the insectoid found was revealing. Human fiction was full of stories about war, conflict, survival against impossible odds, and clever underdogs defeating powerful enemies. These were not just stories. They were cultural lessons. Ways that humans taught their young how to think strategically. Every human child grew up hearing tales about heroes who won through intelligence rather than strength. About warriors who survived by being clever rather than powerful. The child Minho had not been an exception. He was the product of his entire culture. Earth had been preparing its people for galactic competition for generations, even before they made first contact. They had always known that someday they would encounter other species, and they had made sure they would be ready. Orin visited Earth for the first time that year. The crystalline being wanted to understand humanity better by seeing their home world. What Orin discovered surprised the energy being greatly. Earth was beautiful. Blue oceans, green forests, white clouds. A paradise world. But it was also incredibly dangerous. Storms, earthquakes, volcanoes, predators, diseases. Humans had evolved on a planet that was constantly trying to kill them. Orin met with Ambassador Jiwoo during the visit. They stood together on a balcony overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors. "Your world is very beautiful," Orin said, "but also very harsh. I understand now why your people are the way they are." Jiwoo nodded. "Earth taught us to be cautious, to plan ahead, to never assume that tomorrow will be like today. Our planet changes constantly. The weather, the land, everything. We learned early that survival requires constant adaptation. And then you applied those lessons to other humans," Orin observed. "Yes," Jiwoo admitted. "For most of our history, our greatest threat was each other. We developed incredible skills at competition, deception, and strategy. When we finally reached the stars, those skills came with us. Do you think your people will ever truly be at peace?" Orin asked. Jiwoo thought about this for a long moment. "I hope so. But peace is not our natural state. We have to work hard to maintain it. We have to constantly fight against our own instincts for competition and conflict. It is difficult, but we are trying. The galaxy is learning to respect humanity," Orin said. "That is progress." Respect based on fear is not ideal, Jiwoo replied, but it is better than being dismissed as weak. In time, perhaps we can build real trust, but that will take years, maybe generations. On Earth, in a facility hidden deep underground, Minho attended classes with other children like him. There were 43 students in his program, each one specially selected and trained. They learned mathematics, strategy, psychology, and history. They studied the wars of the past to prepare for the conflicts of the future, but they also learned art, music, and philosophy. Earth's leaders understood that warriors needed to know what they were fighting for. They needed to understand peace as well as war. They needed to value life even as they learned how to take it. Minho's teacher, a retired admiral named Taemin, often spoke about the responsibility that came with their abilities. "You are being trained to be guardians," Taemin would say. "Not aggressors. Your purpose is to keep Earth safe, not to conquer others. You must always remember the difference between defense and aggression. That line is thin, and it is easy to cross without realizing it." Minho took these lessons seriously. He had seen how the aliens looked at him after the demonstration at Viridian Prime. They had been afraid. Not just cautious, but genuinely frightened. He did not want to be the cause of that fear. He wanted to be someone who protected others, not someone who threatened them. One day, Minho asked his teacher a difficult question. "Admiral Taemin, do you think the aliens will ever trust us?" The old man considered the question carefully. "Trust is earned through actions over time. We demonstrated our capabilities at Viridian Prime. That was necessary. But now we must demonstrate our good intentions through years of peaceful cooperation. It will not be easy, but it is possible." "I want to help with that," Minho said. "You already are," Taemin replied with a smile. "Every choice you make, every action you take represents humanity to the galaxy. Be worthy of that responsibility." Meanwhile, in the halls of galactic power, the Permanent War Council met regularly. They no longer discussed whether to fight humanity. That question had been answered. Instead, they discussed how to coexist with a species that was fundamentally different from any they had encountered before. The council had learned important lessons. Appearance did not equal capability. Politeness did not mean weakness. And a species that seemed young and inexperienced might actually be the most dangerous one in the room. Some civilizations responded to this knowledge with increased military spending. Others focused on diplomatic relations with Earth. A few tried to study human methods and adapt them to their own cultures. Everyone had their own strategy for dealing with the new reality, but they all agreed on one thing. The galaxy had changed. Humanity's arrival had shaken the established order. Power dynamics that had been stable for thousands of years were now uncertain. The future was unpredictable in a way it had not been for millennia. And somewhere on a small blue planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy, humans continued doing what they had always done. They prepared. They planned. They thought about tomorrow and the day after and the century after that. They did not do this because they wanted war. They did it because they wanted to survive. And survival for humanity required constant vigilance. It required never being caught unprepared. It required always thinking ahead. The aliens had thought the human child was innocuous. They had been wrong. And now the War Council was in permanent session, forever changed by that mistake. But perhaps in time the council would become something different. Not a war council, but a peace council. A place where humans and aliens learned to work together despite their differences. Where fear transformed into respect and respect transformed into friendship. It was possible. Difficult, but possible. And humans had always been good at achieving difficult things. After all, they had survived Earth. Compared to that, getting along with aliens would be easy. Or at least, that is what they told themselves. Time would tell if they were right. The end. They did not do this because they wanted war. They did it because they wanted to survive. And survival for humanity required constant vigilance. It required never being caught unprepared. It required always thinking ahead. The aliens had thought the human child was innocuous. They had been wrong. And now the War Council was in permanent session, forever changed by that mistake. But perhaps in time the council would become something different. Not a war council, but a peace council. A place where humans and aliens learned to work together despite their differences. Where fear transformed into respect and respect transformed into friendship. It was possible. Difficult, but possible. And humans had always been good at achieving difficult things. After all, they had survived Earth. Compared to that, getting along with aliens would be easy. Or at least, that is what they told themselves. Time would tell if they were right. The end.